Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today we're going to spend a long time together with a beautiful painting practice. It's been a while since I published another like a long painting video, and I just felt that was time for me to go back to some of my longest practices. So the video is gonna last more or less an hour, and we start from the foundational drawing, a sketch, and then we're going to paint with watercolors, and then at the end you can or cannot add some details with a black gel pen or an extra fine micron markers or Sharpie, whatever you have available. If you're not sure if you want to do the last step, I suggest you to look what I do in the video, decide if you like it, and decide if you want to incorporate into your practice. The video is long because I guide you step by step to a design which is inspired by my love for modern ranch mid-century house. I just watch a lot of TV shows, so sometimes I get inspired by architectures and I want to paint the house into the landscape. If you're interested into this type of a practices and exercises with watercolors that require the drawing, so you get to exercise your drawing skills, your painting skills with watercolor, holding a little bit of control of the water. And finally, some extra texture and details with a black gel pen or a stylo pen if you prefer to do so and you are a little more advanced, or an extra fine markers. You can find other practices publishing in my YouTube channel under the library of watercolors practice, and they are just truly gorgeous. There is a lot of review about the use of space, the layout of different elements in your images, the sizing, the scale, the foreground, middle ground, and background. So a lot of beautiful, important content that you always get, to review. And there is also a lot of calm and tranquility coming from painting with watercolors when we do have control, but not an absolute control, because there is the element of water that will kind of surprise us, right? And this is the beautiful things about the watercolors. Even when they bleed in through each other, maybe we didn't plan that. It's such a beautiful feeling to just let it happen and let it go and see how we can embrace it in our design. So for this practice, you need a cup with water, a couple of brush, round, small and medium small, watercolors, any brand that you have available, a pencil for drawing, and a razor just in case. Watercolor paper would be better because it comes with the texture and it holds the water very well. However, if you have a Bristol or a mixed media paper, you can try the same practice. You will notice a difference, of course, in the texture and in the way that the paint will be absorbed by the paper. So I, of course, encourage you to use the proper paper, the watercolor paper, to have the best result. And then just, if you cannot do the video in one time because you don't have an hour to spend with me, make sure that you do the design first time, you do the painting, and then the third time you do the details. You can divide the videos in 2 or 3 practices, or you can watch the whole video first and then practices at your own convenience. Remember to do you and to adapt this practice to your own need and your time availability, also, and your spiritual presence, your availability as a persona. Sometimes we feel that we could paint forever. Sometimes after 20 minutes we feel that we are done, and it is totally fine because you can always go back and keep painting. Please remember to subscribe to this channel and help this community to grow. It's something that is a project that is really truly dear to me, and I put in a lot of effort and in creating the design, in creating the idea, in teaching you, because I teach every day my students, so I'm very experienced on different type of communication and technique, strategy, breaking down the practices, explaining step by step, so everyone, regardless the experience and the artistic background, can truly benefit from my practices and can truly learn and feel welcome in this virtual art classroom. Let me know how it goes in the comment, and I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day whenever you are and whatever you are doing, and I see you very soon with more practices. Ciao. Okay, friends, this is our watercolor paper. We're gonna use it in horizontal because I'm gonna build the landscape, okay? The lines, they have to be extremely light, so no pressure, and we use dynamic lines and sketchy lines. So I'm gonna trace a super light, very that you can barely see a line of the horizon. So I know that this is gonna be my foreground, my middle ground, and my background. I'm gonna place the house that I would like to trace today, like that I would like to paint today over here. And as I told you, I want, I'm not using like a copy, any model. I'm just probably imagining the house that I will want to live in. So I'm starting from the front, 2 columns, and I love, I'm obsessed with the modern mid-century. So probably this is what I'm going towards. And because we are doing it frontal and we have to follow the 1-point perspective, all of my lines at 1 point, the one for the roof, will go toward that vanishing point. Okay, so this is why here is not a straight line, but is a diagonal going toward this vanishing point. Okay, we're gonna have beautiful, I love like houses that are dark and moody with wood and black roof and whatever. And I love it like a ranch. So we are gonna flat the roof over here. So pretend that you see, you can picture sort of a triangle, right? But then you cut the top. Going to enlarge this one. Here we're going to lift up the house because I want a beautiful, big and tall, spacious garage. Now this line has to go parallel to this one, right? Then with this case, we're gonna do a little different roof. So we're gonna come out like this, then down, gonna close, double this line a little bit, and then come down straight for the wall. This is, of course, is gonna be lower because here we have a stair, cement slab. We are going to trace a line inside because this is basically the porch, right? And here instead we have a beautiful big garage door because we need to be able to enter in our garage. I love it. I just love to, sometimes when I want to exercise my drawing skill, but just foundational drawing. Remember that the difference is like between when we draw something and we just want to complete the artwork just by drawing technique. Of course, we would add all details and texture and shading and value, everything with the pencil or the tool that we're using for drawing, correct? In this case, yes, we are of course drawing nice detail, but our details, right? So here we are going to, it's gonna be, probably we're gonna put another column over here. We're gonna darken them up, and then door, we're gonna put it here. Why not? Nice, beautiful, big mid-century door. Gonna have some plant, just scribble lines, of course. Another one over here to have our point of green. Here we can have a beautiful window, right? Nice and big and pretty low. I'm gonna divide it in 1, 2, and I will not add any other lines. This one is the roof, perfect. And now we are going to add our landscape. So something in the foreground, for sure. We are going to have like a road. I'm truly imagining my my house, you know, my dream house. Gonna have a road that come from here. This is gonna be maybe cement and asphalt. Over here we have like the meadows, right? Some vegetation. And I truly like to keep it natural. So in my ideal home, I will have this beautiful modern mid-century cement, meadow and nature, and then here the tree, and in the backyard, my garden, the chicken, and whatever I need to. Let me add the pipe because, you know, we don't water on the roof. So we're gonna add these tiny little details. And remember that is a 1-point perspective. So if we had lines on the roof, they will respect the directions, right, of this perspective. So they will go like that. In this case, because the angle is different, they will just go this way. Okay, all black and metals. I truly love it. So now remember what we say, that when we do when we sketch, mostly when we do a foundational sketch, or when we do details that are not too close, because overall this is the closest part to us because it's the foreground, but overall is a pretty far view. So we are going to kind of use very scribbling, you see, sketchy lines to set the implied texture. So this idea of texture that we want to see, some nice rocks and pebbles, right, to create some variety. And I want to leave these pretty natural, so I'm doing some bushes and some plants, but as you notice, I'm just doing these scribbling type of lines, creating these similar but not repetitive shapes, because we want some, you know, natural line. And then maybe you can create different type of plants that feature a different texture, right? So it's an optical illusion. We're just like setting maybe a bigger rock over here, and then plants. So it's gonna look nice and natural. Another big rock, plant, smaller rock, another plant, another tiny little plant. So you're gonna keep adding this scribble until you think that you have enough. I'm going to dark up now the side of the road and probably add double the line, so we have a division between the meadow, like, you know, the ground, natural ground. And then you see also when I do the rocks, we are not going to take care or focus on the precision of these rocks. It's just truly some nice scribble that will allow us to create the variety that we want. Okay, this one doesn't really feature and have any variety, but if you want to kind of add a different type of implied texture, in this case it's gonna suggest us something that is more regular and something that is smoother, you can definitely do it by using your pencil and going just like with longer strokes and shorter strokes here and there. Overall, this is gonna be probably pretty dark gray, because in my design is cement. Now, remember that this is a good practice for you to follow if you want to improve your foundational drawing skill, which is like learning how to use the space, learning how to use 1-point perspective, for example, learning how to create some variety and lay out element before you switch to the watercolor painting, right? So because it is a foundational drawing, we're gonna add some layer to the ground. And here we're gonna put a beautiful, beautiful big tree. And once again, it's a foundational drawing, so we just need to see the shape and the size of our tree, right? So now we're gonna build up with this same scribbling type of lines. As I was saying, this is a foundational drawing, right? So you want it to be to add like your details, of course, because then you need to paint on top and you want to know what are you painting, right? But doesn't have to be all details and stuff like that, because you will add the painting. In this case with watercolor. Foundational drawing, you do it when you are prepping a canvas for you to, you know, for you to paint with acrylics or with oil. Not all artists do foundational painting before painting. Some of them just start the painting, but if you want to kind of set the space and make sure that you know the element that you're going to paint, definitely prepping your space, your surface, in this case is watercolor paper, with a nice foundational drawing, so you know which element and where you want them, definitely could help you to improve the quality. Mostly if you are like a beginner painter, you want to make sure that you know what you're painting, you have some, you know, you want to display some images in a specific way, it's good for you to do so. I would add probably like in the background, let's say that this is our, you know, land, and I would add the nice fence. I feel the fence, you know, they look so cute. They add the little thing in the horizon line, and they make us eyes go from side to side. So it's a nice, pleasant element. And once again, remember it's pretty small, nothing like extreme, because then remember that you're going to paint it. So I'm going to connect and connect, and here, because I left some more distances between the pole of the fence, it looks like is a little closer, which is okay. I'm going to do a little bit on the back as well, right? And then close it, and then probably it's gonna be nice and simple. Now, in the very, very background, because we have some lands, maybe we're gonna start to create some variation and some hill, right? That is typical in a countryside. We can have a multiple, we can create this beautiful, beautiful like idea of this space that is expanding behind us. Tree and bushes will be very sketchy over here, light, nothing more than just scribbles, right? And if you want them on the back, even smaller and smaller, tinier and tinier, because we're going away from our foreground. So everything that is here has a little more texture, more details, and probably I would do this one smaller. Everything that is over here has more texture and, as I was saying, texture and details, and everything that is in the background is fading, is fading, is fading. We want to do some, if you want to add the idea of having, I don't know, maybe we are in a countryside, right? That would be my dream. So we're going to add some nice texture that suggests that we have farms around, we have crops, and so the pattern, of course, and the colors on different hills will show different colors and different pattern according to what is the crops, right? You can have patches of different green. You're allowing yourself also to kind of differentiate the color palette. Otherwise, you know, you don't want everything like a pale, everything flat and everything the same. And if you think about it and if you look carefully, we are really, really, really just sketching like a scribbling almost on the paper. So it's just a matter of the lines that we want to use. And maybe here, because it's a little closer, we can add some nice scribble, bigger scribble, because it suggests that we can see maybe the crops, maybe it's a pumpkin field or whatever. We can see that already. While here, it will be probably just spots that we can paint in different colors. Okay, so now that we have our foundational drawing, all the sketch, we can leave this as a sky. We don't need to touch, everything will happen with the painting. You prep your watercolors, any brand that you have available, and we start this painting. You can start from the sky, coming back, you can start from the bottom. Doesn't really change anything, but it would set definitely. Probably sometimes I like to start from the sky, so I know if I want a light blue sky, it will definitely change a little bit the color palette that I would use for the rest of my painting. I'm gonna use it for the sky, very, very light and full of water, right? So the beauty of watercolors is that they are made with water. So depending and according to the amount of water that we are using, we will have a paler color, more vibrant and more intense, different level of saturation. So in this case, I'm dipping the paintbrush in the water, I'm taking the blue that I want out of the palette, and then I dip again the brush in the water before touching the paper. And I'm gonna do it until like I finish and complete my sky. When I arrive close to the horizon line, maybe I want my color to be a little more intense, and you don't wanna like put the blue on top of your plants and green. But if that happens, my friends, it's not a big deal, because watercolor comes with this transparency, right? So they can be overlapped and they will still, you know, they will show the color underneath in a nice, beautiful, very spontaneous way, which I like it. What I love about the watercolors practice, so if you're interested in do more watercolors practice, make sure that you check also my previous one. Some are like featuring drawing technique. So we draw and we talk about more specifically about still life, drawing landscape, drawing texture and value, and then at the end I brush my drawing gently with watercolors, so it gives you another way that you can use the watercolors if you like them. But then I have a watercolor practice that actually feature usually houses and nice landscape, which I love because they allow you to exercise on different level and different technique. First, the drawing technique and understanding a little bit the space and the difference between foreground, middle ground, and background. And then doing all this line, more geometrical for what concern the house and more organic for what concern the environment around. So you exercise two different type of skills, right, already. And then you get the opportunity to paint and have fun with the watercolors and have a beautiful product. Now I'm gonna go down to my heels. I'm gonna use light green, dark green to create a nice variation, but because the palette is similar, then it will give us some unity. In this case, I'm going to use a little less water than I did for the sky, just because I want to control my brush a little more. And so I'm gonna go around and fill few bushes with the same green before I switch to another. We're gonna let it set and dry. So always give yourself, you know, allow sometimes for the watercolors to set on the paper before going over eventually. You can go over multiple times, so just be careful. You need to have a good quality of paper, otherwise if you go too much, you could risk to break the paper. You can change the green that you're using, going toward a lighter one, maybe for the very background. I love it. You go gently just by tipping on the paper. Once again, if some bleeding, which means that when the color bleeds into another one happen, it's exactly what we want. It's exactly like the beauty of watercolor, even in the case like this one where you have a specific design that you would like to follow. Okay, so we're gonna add some nice light green here and there. Then I'm going to dark it up a little bit and go back so I can create some value. So the contrast between light and darkness, right, that makes all of our painting and drawing and in general artworks way better. Now I'm going to create some brown greenish. Let's see what we want on these heels underneath. If you think that the color that is giving you a little too dark, you're going to dip the brush in the water and then spread the color around. Don't worry if you go a little bit on top of the trees, because they will probably feature a more intense color compared to the background. And we're gonna pay a little more attention to the value and some implied texture that we want. We're gonna spread it out. Now I'm gonna switch into the brown, darker brown. Fill it up with the water. Let's see, what do we have? Nice. We're gonna do it over here. I personally love to use the color this way, like to have guidelines to follow, so to create for me a drawing, just because first I love to exercise my drawing skills, as I was saying before, and I love to visualize things that I love. I love to put them on paper and just, for example, the perfect house for me, a modern ranch, mid-century, not too big but spacious, that develop in the background, and then a beautiful view of the hills and the countryside, a nice, comfortable entrance, and sometimes I would do Cape Cod style of homes, colonial, stuff like that, just because I like and I want to see them on the paper. And so I prefer to use the watercolor in this way, which is a little more control, because you are not using too much water, and you are controlling the amount of colors that you want to see on the paper, because you want to feel specific space. At the same time, though, you also have the little surprise coming from the water, right? Because we never know. It's just like we need to trust the process, and sometimes the watercolor will bleed in through the paper into another one. It would just surprise us, because maybe it's darker or lighter than we expect, and we just have to go with the flow, which is something that I truly, truly, truly love. You don't have to paint the whole area. You can leave, for example, some white spot, like the light is coming and touching like that ground. I know that we didn't do clouds on the sky, so it's pretty like linear in this case. If you have clouds and you want to kind of create that effect, that there is some reflected light, you can leave some lighter, some white space. Remember that with watercolor, you need to be careful not to go too dark, because there is no really way back for us from that darkness. It's not like acrylics, watercolor, because they have that transparency element in them. They cannot, like a lighter color cannot cover a darker. So just be careful and not over dark it all at once. I'm going to play with some yellow as well, because maybe I want to have some spots of light, and so maybe I'm gonna light up, you see where I left the white spaces with the green. I'm now just touching them with the yellow. And remember that the secret is like proceed little by little. Now on to our beautiful trees. If you wanna do like fall colors, of course you will go for a different palette than the one that I'm using. We can introduce the brown and the orange on the trees, but in this case I'm not going there yet. I need to see still a lot of green. You see, I'm barely touching the paper. Look carefully at the technique, spreading the color and leaving some white gaps. Picking some more water, changing the green, mix it up with another one, taking a little bit of water, and then doing another one, and I'm going over here. If I think that I need a little more water, I would dip my brush in the water again, and then color my tree with this tiny, tiny little scribbling movement, exactly as I use them for the pencil. Because remember, what we say is just an optical illusion, right? Created by different type of lines on the paper. So we don't want to have a perfect line, or something like that, but we want instead to let it go. Now I'm going to opt for a very dark and more moody green for this tree on the back. Love it. And don't worry if it looks very, very dark, because once the water get absorbed by the paper, the color will naturally light up a little bit, because part of the pigment is not on the paper anymore, but it got absorbed in. So trust the process and don't panic. And now I'm going to use the same dark green to go in some of the spots that I left white before in the tree, and to create this beautiful variation in value. The value is, as you know, an alternation between the light and the shadow, and it's truly important because it will makes our drawing look really more realistic, more three-dimensional, more interesting, and add the depth to whatever we are painting or drawing. So it's a very, very, very important and necessary element. I would dark up also a little bit here, also to represent maybe that some shadows, right? There is something truly magical in seeing, you know, images taking, you know, taking life, right? As we paint them and we work on them. And now I'm going to grab the light green instead, and I'm going to add some light green on top of these trees in the back to create also some variation. And light up a little bit the tree, mostly the tip. Love it. Perfect. Now for my fan, I will use actually a dark gray. I told you that I like modern for what comes, you know, when it comes to architecture. And if I think that is a little too dark, I'm going to dip my brush in the water and spread what I have gently and carefully. We have fans over here, fans over here, fans over here, and then I'm gonna grab a little bit more of the gray, add a little bit of water, twist the paper a little bit so I'm more comfortable, and complete the painting. Trust the process because the gray, even if it looks very dark now, it will light up eventually. I'm gonna grab some black and dark gray to make it even darker because my roof, my friends, is going to be dark. Once again, trust the process, proceed slowly, spread the color. Don't worry that you're coloring over your pencil lines because at the end with the black gel pen or Sharpies or any very extra fine black utensil that you have available, we're gonna go over our details and stuff like that. Sorry for the noise underneath my voice. It's just my husband came back from the gym doing his I think his protein smoothie, so it's fine. It's gonna be a second. I want this one to be nice and dark, so I'm using less water, so you see I can control the color and spread it out where I want it without having almost like any bleeding, so without having this dark gray going behind, you know. I'm gonna add also line over here because there is some, you know, depth from that and thickness from that. Now let's go for a nice brown, not too dark, a little warm, and let's see, and let's test it. Probably I'm gonna mix it with a little darker brown and then tap it with the water, and I'm going to paint and use it for my garage door. And I'm not concerned at all if I'm leaving some white spaces, and also from my entrance door. Love it. Darker brown for the trunk of the tree, and this time I truly want to have it, you know, to control it because I want to be able to see, you know, the tree itself and not having it the trunk all over the place, so I have the color bleeding in. I'm going to add some color a little bit the roots as well, and then I'm going to add a few strokes of brown even inside the trees, as we sometimes see the branches, right, coming out from the leaves. So it's a little more natural. Love it. Perfect. Now I'm going to create a gray hint of green. To create the color that I want to see here. And probably I would do it on the house as well. I want a little bit more water. I'm gonna tap my brush on the piece of paper towel that I'm keeping here. I'm gonna use also to keep my session clean. And then I'm going to carefully spread this color around. You can choose your own color, of course. You don't have to copy mine. I'm doing what I feel attracted to. As I say, when I want to exercise my drawing and painting skills, I like to paint something that I know that I feel connected with. So in painting and visualizing my perfect and ideal house and environment, I feel that connection, right? That keeps me focused and help me to care of details that otherwise I would not care that much if I feel completely disconnected. I'm gonna have some light gray over here for the cement. I'm going to use a super light blue. Just because I have the sky that is blue, I'm gonna tap it in the water several times though, because I want it lighter, but I want to use it to feel the windows inside, just because it is a nice color connection with the background. Don't worry about this line with the pencil, and we also don't worry that much if we leave some white spaces. It's even better actually. Now we are going to do the dark gray, because I want to, this for me at least is not gravel. It could be gravel, it could be cement, or whatever you want it. We can use pretty much water like we did for the sky, because this is a big area. So we are going to spread carefully, but not too carefully. Sometimes just dipping in with the water so we can spread it out a little more, right? We want some variation as well. So you pick the dark gray, you go and you spread the color around. If you go outside of the paper, it's not a big deal, because luckily watercolor can be washed from surface. They're not like, you know, other markers, for example, that would damage your table immediately. I'm going to do some dark over here, and then just have fun, spread this color around. If you want a lighter color, because for you it's gonna be dirt or whatever, any other materials, feel free to do you. Okay, now a little bit more. It's beautiful, like now I'm gonna close the door because also my son arrived, and so they start like a conversation. Give me a second. And voila, door is closed, and we can keep our beautiful painting practice. Keep going, keep going. Spread it out, trust the process, let it set. You will have a beautiful variation of, you see, texture that comes, like for the sky, that comes from the watercolor itself. And then with the black and very little water, tap it on the piece of paper. If you think that it's still too wet, you want to be able to control it. Maybe we can go around some of the details, but if you don't feel safe in doing so, do not do it, and just wait to use an extra fine Sharpie. It's totally fine. Okay, now I want to do grass over here, because yes, near the house I want it nice and bright and green. Okay, in the back there will be probably the back of the house garden, So, but here I want a beautiful bright green that can contrast this dark color for the cement. So I'm gonna set first my green. Where I want it and I need it, just as a foundation. Then we're gonna do some texture. I'm gonna show you in a second. So you set and spread your color smoothly, right? We're gonna let it set, and then with a very fine, brush, we are going to add the texture, because if we have grass and if it's not gonna be all smooth and perfect, right? We want actually the contrary of that. We wanted to show variation. So this is what I would do also here. Here I want a little bit of brown, because we say that I'm gonna leave it more natural, like meadow type of. A little bit of green, and we are going to prep the foundational color over here as well, around the bushes that we traced before, around the rocks. If we overlap a little bit and we go on them, it's not a big deal, because we are going to work with different layers, right? And in this case, because we're not using a dark color, even if there is transparency and we're gonna be able to see what is underneath, it's actually playing in our favor. It's gonna be beautiful. Gonna dip it just in the water and bring this color down. Going in, back, maybe here it's a little greener, maybe here it's a little darker also. Remember, nice and natural. Now we can pick the colors that we want for our bushes, so we can go darker and then maybe lighter, depending. So I'm not gonna fill the whole bush with this, but I'm going to use it here and there on the different type of bushes until it gets too light and I wanna regain some more. So we have one side that is gonna naturally be a little darker, showing a beautiful alternation of value and giving our piece more interest. This one also is gonna be different type of texture, so I'm using, as you see, a different type of strokes because I just want it so. And then I can go also a little bit on top of that green that we first used, right? Now I'm going to switch to a brighter green and I'm going to do the rest. Once again, if you happen to take a little more water and there is more bleeding, something totally fine, because what we're doing is nature, right? It's natural, and we want to represent the variation. So these practice are a little longer than just the only drawing practice or the practice with alcohol markers, because you need to first dedicate some time and attention to the design, so the drawing technique, thinking about lines, shapes, and how to use the space, right? But then you have to also paint, so it will take you some time to fill with the paint, and then finally to do the final details that you can or cannot do. You don't have to. If you don't like it, if you think that is complete and done over here, you can keep it doing here. Just stop it after we finish the painting, sorry. So I'm cleaning basically now the brush underneath, when I see some white gaps, some bushes that I didn't fill, some white gaps that I didn't paint with the first foundational color. So as we say, we create some nice visual variation that suggests different type of vegetations, right? And now I'm going to do some gray for the rocks. Over here. And once again, remember, you barely touch with the paper. We are not concerned if you're going a little bit outside of the shape of the rocks. If you're not feeling completely the rocks, we don't. It's just an optical illusion that is created with colors, right? And then maybe we want to mix also sort of a grayish brownish with the rocks, darker or lighter. So do not worry. I also like the fact that this gray is not too dark, but it's also adding a little bit of the necessary darkness. So I'm going to, for example, like a little shadow that we want underneath these rocks. And then I'm going to choose a brown, extremely dry, and I'm going to finish the painting of the rocks and pebbles. You can do also some, you can add some tiny little strokes that will give some marks, will leave some marks, and it's beautiful. I feel that they add some texture to this meadow, so to the ground, right? And they make it look a little more natural, and they give us more variation. And as you notice, everything is a matter of layer. Now I'm going to spoil my white with some gray and not too much water, because I want to go over here to paint a little bit these little walls or whatever is gonna be like the division between the road. And I don't care at all if there's empty, like a white space. Maybe I can dip my brush in the water and gently move it over to spread the color, but not too much, honestly. I'm not worried at all. Perfect. Now let's go for some texture on the grass, and then basically our painting is done. So I would probably choose a bright green, but slightly darker than the one that I use for the bottom, and I'm going to use it barely dry. You can tilt the paper if it's better for you, and I'm going to use these tiny little strokes. You need to be patient. You barely touch the paper. If you want to try and test these strokes on a separate piece of paper, if you're a very beginner and you think that you might have difficulty, you do not have to push at all on the paper. There is zero pressure, because if you add the pressure, then the color will bleed. So you just pretend that you're tickling the paper, and if the green is too light, go for a darker one, because once again we want some variation. So tickle that. And actually I'm gonna also use this one for the two plants over here, 1 and 2, and tickle the paper. Okay, randomly put these tiny little strokes. So you want to give some overlapping to them. You can do a little bit like one long stroke to indicate some shadow, right? And now is my husband cleaning the Vitamix machine. It's fantastic. I love it. It's just very noisy, but very good machine. But here we are. I'm in my little corner, you know, practicing art. So I don't mind that much. And then if you want, you can do over here, because we are going farther, we don't see like the grass leaves, right? So what we would see are basically tiny little, you know, dots, irregular dots. So you can place more in one spot, pick more green, make sure that it's pretty, you know, it's not too much water in the brush, so when you tap it, the color doesn't bleed through. You can have darker, maybe near the fence, right, where usually grass, you cannot cut it that well, and so it will grow taller and definitely give us more like. And you see, it's just the optical illusion. By tapping these tiny little dots here and there, look how beautiful is the effect, right? Something that is, you know, flat, 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 now is taking life and is giving us the implied texture, so the fake, the illusion of the real texture of the grass. It's beautiful. Now we patiently do the same on the other side. We first start with, and look, the color bled through the web, but look, it looks like a plant. So this is what I say, do not panic if that happens. And actually with watercolor is a blessing, so let it happen. And then here we're gonna do first the bigger strokes because we know that this one is the closest one. And remember, do not add any pressure. And I know this practice is long, but it's been such a long time since I didn't do a watercolor practice that I'm truly, truly, truly happy because I got the opportunity. And then as we go farther apart, we're gonna switch to these irregular scribbles and dots in the grass. I'm gonna pick the darker green as I did over here because I truly, truly love it. Tap it on that, and then maybe do some darker strokes near the house, and then bring over here along the fence. That in this case it's a little farther than this one. It's beautiful. With my green, I'm gonna come back over here and maybe I'm going to go over quickly to some of these scribbles texture that I did at the very beginning with the pencil, just because I feel that adding, you know, some variation in colors help us to intensify that implied texture that we want to, that makes our drawing way more beautiful. So I'm just gently and kind of, you know, very spontaneously going over, and that is what we have. I love it. Now if you have a black pen or a Sharpie, you can do some of the lines, you can retrieve some of the lines. Just remember, we don't want neat precise outline. Move the paper around because you don't want to go over the, you know, the watercolor, just in case they are still drying. And you know, the lines that I'm doing, if you notice, they're pretty like sketchy, nothing precise, the same nature of lines that we use for the drawing at the beginning. I'm going to kind of go over without worry about the perfection of these lines. I'm going to go over on the some of the details, such as the fence, to add that more interest and depth to it. Now on the house, probably I'm gonna go like an outline, some of the architectural design, such as the column, so we can see them even better. The vase I'm gonna do entirely black, right? Then some like the outline of the door. And remember, the details are from far, pretty far, right? I would add some of these lines that will give us that nice idea of reflection on the glass. Nice black frame for our windows on top of the garage. I'm gonna kind of going over the roof, the lines of the house. gonna add some kind of lateral texture here, just like a little bit of more visual interest. And probably I'm going to go a little over these lines, pretending that there is some gravel and some texture. But everything is kind of an approximation, right? We don't want to make it look so perfect. Let's say that these are bricks or rocks. I'm gonna do it like this. If you want to retrieve some of the shape of the rocks, you can definitely do so and add some nice, texture. Remember, we are using this type of tiny little sketchy lines. It's not working because the painting was a little dry, wet. So this is why sometimes we need to be careful. I like to, you see, I'm kind of going over some of the parts, to just create that darker value that will add a little more visual interest. And I'm not gonna do it on the background because I wanted to leave it probably like nice and gentle. Maybe on the trees, I can just go around sketchily around the, the shape of the tree, so we can see them and reshape them and add some texture inside. Over here and over here. And the same. So I just wanted to show you the way that this piece will look if you decided to add this final little touch with a Sharpie or a black gel pen. I personally love this style so much because it still gives you all like the beautiful like effect and surprise of the watercolor, but it's a little more like define in its styles, like design, probably because I love so much house designing, and this is the most common style that people represent, like with some lines, watercolor, just to fulfill. And it's a tremendous practice, so much value in this practice. It's an hour, so you can divide the practice in 2 times. Maybe one time you do the design and you set the color, second times you come back over and you do these final little touch. Barely scratching the paper. Look how pretty. Over here as well. You don't forget the top of the fence, and over here too, just to increase and go over. So it's also nice because we basically don't see the pencil underneath anymore. Everything is now part of this beautiful design. And voila, our piece is complete. Actually, what am I doing? Of course, I need to do on top of the texture of this, because these are the ones that we see closer, right? And at this point, we want something cohesive and coherent, so with the piece. So we respected the technique. And now you can think about it if you want to do it on yours as well, or if you like it just with the pencil and the watercolor, and it's totally up to you. But at least, this is probably the longest practice that I have been publishing for a while. Sometimes I feel that people want something quick and fast, but you know what? Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And I feel so happy about this piece and the many things that I have been exercising and reviewing and learning while doing it. And I hope that you will allow yourself to this opportunity to learn this amazing way to use watercolor. I see you very soon with another one. Ciao!